All right, so you guys might remember this. Well, actually, this is the 3600X. The one in there is the 4600G that came out of the HP Prebuilt. Yeah, we're looking at that one again. Okay, so the reason why we are looking at that one is because when I took it out of the box and I did a video on just trying to get the 4600 to stretch its legs a little bit, I did find that in some tests it came pretty close, and you're going to have to kind of ignore the fact this has still got a little bit of dirt on it, not dirt on it, but the compound on it, because I didn't clean it all the way off. But it came reasonably close in some of the tests to the 3600X. And so it got me to think, if I had a system that I didn't have any kind of barriers as far as GPU goes, which now the RTX 3060 will provide, that maybe I could see how those two actually compare to each other and how well they could actually do. So I went ahead and went about trying to do that. What I found, first off, right out of the box, is that there seems to be a limitation in the 4600G that caps it off at only being able to overclock the memory at 3200 megahertz instead of 36. Now the kit I have in here is a kit of Trident Z, and it runs at 36, or I can overclock it. The DOHC profile says I can go ahead and, the memory profile says I can overclock it to 3600. 4600G won't even come on at that point. So I had to go back and try to find out, cleared the CMOS, did it all over again, and went back and I checked, and sure enough, the specs on AMD's own page says that it runs at the max of 3200. So I did not go back and cap the 3600X down to the same speed, because this isn't a make them equal and see where they stand. This is a what can I do and how do they actually compare to each other. So if you've got one or the other, you're kind of being able to make a choice there. One of the advantages of the Ryzen 5 3600X is that will clock higher. So I took that into account. I didn't overclock anything else, only the memory speed. That was the only thing that I worried about. So keep in mind that for all of this, the 3600X is going to be running at that 3600, and the memory on the 4600G, yeah, it's really confusing, isn't it? The 3600G will be running slightly smaller or slightly lower on the memory clock speeds, but I think you're going to find that it actually ends up being pretty decent. First of all, I ran a bunch of synthetic tests, and I ran Firestrike, and pretty comparable. I can't really complain too much. And when I do this on the charts, it'll look a little bit weird because those numbers are then like the 18 or 19,000. So I had to like make them fit on the chart. But in Firestrike, not too far away from each other, fairly close. And then when I ran in TimeSpy, again, relatively close. In the synthetic benchmarks, there were a little bit of a mix. For the most part, the Ryzen 5 3600X came out on top, but they were reasonably close, and there was a couple of tests that the 4600G actually did better in, and I'm not really sure. I'm thinking a combination of the difference in memory, or the difference in the amount of buffer that's actually on that 4600G and the slower clock speed for the memory is what's going to handicap it a little bit, but still not very far off and not horrible. So I went ahead and shadowed the Tomb Raider. There is a little bit of an advantage here with shadow. You can see that it's a good 10%, and by far, I mean, you're still getting a good experience and a smooth experience with the 4600G, but that 3600X really just does outshine it. In Borderlands 3, they're close. They're very, very close, and arguably the same type of thing, much closer than they were in Shadow of the Tomb Raider. But again, the 3600X does come back out on top. For Dirt 5, they're almost indistinguishable. They're within a frame with each other, and I could definitely say there's a margin of error. And the more I run the test, they come that close. They're not very far off at all. No matter how many times I run through this, they're always within a few frames of each other. Very good sign. And again, we're almost tied here, and that's in spite of the difference in the memory speed and the buffer. In Far Cry 5. Clearly the Ryzen, the 3600X is a little bit better here. The one thing that I found weird when I was trying to test the 4600G is the more times that I ran this to try to get consistency, the lower the FPS was each time I ran it. Not by much, just slightly, like a frame or two lower. And so when I ran, say 3 tests, my highest one would be the first one, and then a little bit lower, then a little bit lower. So when you happen to take an average, that's what you get. But the 3600X had no such issue with that. Right. Now, Metro Exodus was the last one I actually recorded or tested here. Now, even though it has ray tracing and DLSS and all that stuff, I did test it, but I'm not recording it here. I'm just doing CPU. I'm not doing graphics cards. So there's no sense in me going through and showing you all the stuff for ray tracing or anything like that. Same reason why I did not include Control or Cyberpunk 2077, which are 2 games I've also started including lately. I didn't put those on here either, simply because I'm not looking at ray tracing or DLSS. I'm just looking at the CPU and how well that does against each other, or how well they do against each other. So what's my takeaway of all this? The takeaway is the 3600X is much, much easier to get. Typically that 4600G is only going to be available in a pre-built. However, if you have that pre-built and you're looking at getting, say, a 3600G or something like that, should you do it? No. I'm going to tell you flat out no. That 4600G is perfectly capable. If you can fit in that pre-built, if you don't already have a graphics card, but you can fit one in, do it. It's going to make all the difference in the world. Far more of a difference than it would be trying to put a Ryzen 3600X into that same pre-built. Vice versa, if you have a 3600X and you're thinking, oh, well, it's the next series up, it's a 4000 series instead of the 3000 series, should I go ahead and do it? Again, no. You're not gaining anything by doing it. And in most cases, you're better off with a 3600X. It's just a better processor because it has more of a buffer and you can clock it higher with the memory speed. You can probably get quite a bit more out of the 3600X, more than that sweet spot of 3600 megahertz. Boy, there's a lot of like hundreds, huh? You could probably get more memory speed out of that as well. But that 3600 or so is the sweet spot, because remember that Infinity Cache runs at 1800 megahertz. You double that, 3600, and so it's an even multiple. So it's going to run much, much better like that. You're not going to have any kind of issues as far as where that sweet spot is, because you're on it. My overall conclusion, both of these processors are awesome. Once you take that 4600 out of that HP pre-built, she runs great. She'll do a fantastic job. You've got nothing to worry about. And if it is something you're moving out of there and you're going to put in a different motherboard, there's a couple things you need to make sure of. Go ahead and check on the manufacturer's website to see and make sure that that motherboard is compatible. There are some that are and some that are not. In some cases, like the Asus motherboards, no problem at all. And Gigabyte, they're going to have to go back and upgrade their BIOS, because not only do you have this set of CPUs that are running around out there that are not supported yet, but also on August 5th, you got the 5600G and 5700G that are going to make an appearance. And so you really need to, you'll have to make sure that your BIOS is updated for that. And it's not so far, at least not the latest version I was looking at. I think it was F34 was the latest version, and it did not have support for either one of those yet. So it is something you're going to have to look at. I have not looked at MSI or any of the other manufacturers yet to find out what their specs are, but that would be the one thing I would look for. On August 5th, like I said, the 5600 is supposed to be coming out for like 270 bucks. The 5700 is supposed to be coming out for like 350. It might be worth it just to go ahead and wait until then. However, if you are one of those lucky people that do have this processor, that 4600G and an HP pre-built, you'll have no problem at all trying to move that to a different motherboard, providing it's supported. You'll have no problem at all once you get into that other motherboard, actually upgrading this and putting a video card, a power supply, and all that good stuff, and having a great, great gaming PC. I haven't really checked it too much against stuff like the productivity. I haven't tried to edit any videos or anything like that. I have a feeling that the amount of buffer or the amount of memory buffer on the chip might inhibit that a little bit, but still, I mean, you're still getting a very, very solid deal. And obviously she plays games pretty well. So I don't want to ramble on and on and on, but that's all I got for right now. If you liked the video or found it helpful, please go ahead and hit a thumbs up. If not, you can hit a thumbs down, but you know, kind of tell me why if you don't mind. Don't be afraid to visit me on the other social medias. As always, I always appreciate if you hit that little red subscribe button down there. That always makes me happy and YouTube happy, and it'll make you happy too, because you get to see more stuff like this. We are going to take some more looks at this, because I am, this time we were just talking about the 4600G and the 3600X. Both of them are Ryzen processors. Both of them are Ryzen 5s, but coming up, that 5600G, I'm going to try to lay my hands on that to see how that compares to these two processors and kind of give you something there as well. So that's all I got. Stay tuned for more stuff, and until next time, folks, I'll see you later.